What's going on, football fans? It's your boy GS Luke here with a DFS preview for Monday Night Football between the Raiders and the Chiefs. A pretty high total up there, a large spread, 7 points for the Chiefs, but nonetheless, Vegas is expecting there to be plenty of fantasy production. Fireworks for anybody out there needing a Monday night miracle for their season-long league. But in either circumstance, going to focus on the DFS Draftkings slate here for the single game, touching on GPP strategy, going through some of the stacks, sort of value picks or just flyers that you can take down low, just all of the strategy notes and research that you need heading into tonight's slate. So without further ado, a lot that we need to talk about here. Let's go ahead and get this thing rocking. All right, we've got my projections on the screen, and we're going to go ahead and touch on the game script in general to begin, and then talk about some of my favorite plays that I'll be getting to. So first and foremost, a 51.5 point total, one of the highest spreads we've seen for actually a week or two at this point, and two offenses that aren't afraid to move the ball downfield. Derek Carr, that whole offense in general has been a lot less efficient in 2022 than what we saw there in 2020 and 2021. And as a result, they're off to a really slow start. And if they can't win against the Chiefs tonight, and again, they're a whole 7-point underdog there, I believe they're going to start 1-4, which is one of the worst starts they've had for at least 3 or 4 years. So they're looking to avoid that. On the other side, you have Patrick Mahomes, who hasn't quite been his full 100% self to this point. I mean, he's still been like a 90-95% Patrick Mahomes, but we've yet to have that explosion game. They've all been a little bit subdued. He's gone out there, he's had very efficient performances, but he's yet to go out there have that like 6 touchdown game, 500 yards that you'll see a few times from Mahomes year in and year out. But to this point, look like an absolute juggernaut. Them and the Bills are going to be the team to beat. In fact, they end up playing next Sunday against each other. So that's going to be a fun one to watch. But in this matchup, all of the hype, all of the steam is going to be behind the Chiefs. And I understand it. They're the favorites, coming in as one of the more efficient offenses in all of the NFL. The unfortunate part is that they have so many pieces, so many different players that contribute to their offense, and it makes it especially difficult to predict who's going to go off. I mean, you've seen guys like Noah Gray catch touchdowns, Michael Byrne, Jody Fortson has multiple red zone touches to this point of the year. And on the flip side, the Raiders are a little bit banged up. They don't have all that depth you're looking for. A few wide receivers that aren't quite at full health. I mean, even Hunter Renfrow, who's back, is still dealing with a little bit of a nagging injury. And from the running back perspective, they're nowhere near as deep as the Chiefs, who you're going to see them use 3 legitimate running backs, right? CEH, you have Jerick McKinnon, also Isaiah Pacheco, are all going to see legitimate touches. And sure, you still have 3 running backs for the Raiders, but a majority of their fantasy production gets funneled through 4, maybe 5 players at the very most on that offense. So when we're trying to predict ceiling performances, like who are trying to take at the captain slot, and you can see over here, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, I like the Raiders because there's just less people to feed on that offense. And if we're expecting this to be even remotely competitive, I think you might get that 25 to 30 point performance from one of the Raiders players rather than going to a Chiefs player. Now, in general, I tend to agree with the general sentiment that the Chiefs are going to win this game, right? They have a lot more production, implied point total, all the things that we're looking for from a fantasy point perspective, but I do worry that it's a little bit more spread out than what we have for the Raiders. So I'm still getting to plenty of the Chiefs. I mean, I love Mahomes, still have Travis Kelce at the captain slot, but we'll talk about here in a second. It's just that I think maybe those top end performances, the guys that I'm slamming into captain, and they're also a little bit cheaper, are players like a Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, or even going up to a Devontae Adams, who's over $17,000 at the captain slot. He's seen just a ridiculous target share to this point, nearly 40% for, I believe, at least 2 of his first 3 or 4 games. Just ridiculous stuff from a Devontae Adams. But with that being said, right, so I think that the Raiders offense a little bit more concentrated, the Chiefs maybe a little bit more spread out. Let's talk about specific players and how I'm handling them. So at the top, you have the both quarterbacks. So Mahomes, $12,000. You have $10,200 for Derek Carr. It's probably a little bit too expensive for Carr, especially given his production to this point, but I think that both are viable, especially if you're going with the heavy stack in either direction. If you're taking 2, maybe 3 skill position players from one team, you almost certainly want to have their quarterback in there too. And while I don't think you have to set a rule to do so, if you're only playing 10 to 20 lineups, you probably should. 150 might be able to get away with not having that role. But in general, I understand getting to both quarterbacks, right? There's scenarios where I think it makes plenty of sense. They're unfortunately just a little bit expensive. And I think using them at the captain slot is a little bit risky, a little bit dicey for me. I'd rather take one of the skill position players. First off, you're usually getting a salary decrease, particularly for some of these middle tier options. When it comes to your salary, particularly trying to take 3 or 4 studs in a lineup, it's a lot easier to do so if you're getting to a Darren Waller or Hunter Renfrow at that position. But also when you're dealing with correlation, getting to a top end performance, Mahomes is probably going to have to rush you in a touchdown to get to something like a 28-30-point performance. You could say I have his median right now at 24 points, which isn't all that bad. Whereas, down here, players, like a Waller or a Renfrow, their median projection isn't anywhere near Mahomes's, but Waller has a 30-35 point ceiling. We know that Hunter Renfrow can get you to 25, maybe 28 fantasy points, even at a $5,800 price tag. 25 to 30 points at $8,700 is a completely different story than spending nearly $10,000 more for that same sort of production, right? So, points per dollar is a good way to look at that. You can see Patrick Mahomes still projects off the board when it comes to points per dollar. It's just the opportunity cost involved with getting to somebody at 18 grand or even $15,300 for Derek Carr at the captain slot. Just a little bit more than what I'm willing to invest in. Now, Davante Adams and Travis Kelce, the reason why I like getting to them at captain is, first off, they're a little bit lower owned than a Patrick Mahomes. Plus, they can get you to that 30-point performance a little bit more often than Mahomes. For him, it's going to take you some of that rushing upside. Even for Derek Carr, right, he's probably going to have to bring you a rushing touchdown somehow to the table to get to that sort of performance. Whereas Travis Kelce, Davante Adams, they get you 10 catches, 150 yards, and a touchdown. That gets you to that sort of production, or at least very close to it. So we've seen it time and time again from them. They can get to a ceiling performance without their quarterback necessarily getting there too, because of how large of a target share that they're getting. I kind of alluded to it before. Davante Adams has had over a 40% target share in multiple games. Travis Kelce, while he's not getting nearly as concentrated of ownership, or just not ownership, usage, he's also doing it a lot more efficiently. He's dealing with Patty Mahomes as his quarterback, higher implied team total there. So if you're going to get to any of the Chiefs players at captain, at least as of right now, and remember, these projections are what I'm working with right now. If you want access to them as they change throughout the day, when we get inactives, actives, we see some of the sentiment around the industry. The ownership numbers are going to change drastically throughout the day. Make sure you're on the Patreon page. But as of right now, he's the only player on the Chiefs that I'm taking at captain. And some of that comes down to ownership. You can see, guys like Marcus Valdes-Scantling, Juju are still getting attention. You're not getting a huge ownership discount on taking a CEH at the captain slot. So I'd rather get to some of the more sure prospects that are still only being owned in about 11 or 12% of lineups, which isn't low, right? They're still getting a significant amount of attention there, but it's not nearly as chalky as they probably should be for this slate. Moving down, Derek Carr, I like him in a few Raiders heavy stacks. If you expect them to win this game, Derek Carr is a great option. He's a little bit easier to fit into lineups too. So if you're trying to take like a 3-3 build or a 4-2 in either direction and you want to sneak in a quarterback, he's a little bit more feasible than going to a $12,000 Patty Mahomes. But this is the real sweet spot here. So when we get into this sub 10K range, I'd say the guys above $5,000 are the guys you want to focus on here. From Mac Hollins up to Josh Jacobs, this is the zone that's either going to win you or lose you at GPP. And let's talk through it. So as of right now, Josh Jacobs is going to be a fade for me, mostly because I expect them to play from behind. I'm going to be playing a game script where I expect Kansas City to win tonight, but I do think it's going to be a close game. And I think you're going to see a lot of 4-2, 5-1 Chiefs stacks. So a lot of times I advocate for going for more of a heavy approach on one team versus the other, or even playing a heavy approach of both teams, right? Kind of like splitting it down the middle, playing 75 lineups that are 5-1 on one team and maybe 75 lineups of a 5-1 of the other team. I'm going to be playing this a lot more towards a 3-3 or maybe a 4-2 for either team at the very most in either direction. And unless I'm playing a heavy a heavy Raiders stack, I'm not going to be getting to a ton of Josh Jacobs, because for him to go out there and hit a 15, maybe 20 point performance, he's either going to have to bring a bunch of touchdown equity to the table or be playing from ahead, right? Getting 25 to 30 touches as a running back. And I just don't see that many scripts where that happens for him. He's still 34% owned. He's nearly 7% owned at captain. So it's not like he's being overlooked here. And though he does catch passes out of the backfield, I expect guys, down here like a Brandon Bolden to get a lot more usage out of the backfield as a receiving back. Zamir White probably even going to get a few targets out of the backfield from time to time. I'm just not all that enthralled with the Josh Jacobs. So in this game script, I still expect the Chiefs to win. So that's really keeping me off of a Josh Jacobs. I'm okay with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I do worry about the other two running backs, like a Jerick McKinnon and Pacheco taking some of the touches. So he's going to be actually a player I'm below the field on. Probably only going to have like 15 to 20% as a case of FOMO. In fact, I may actually take him out of the player pool by the end of the day, so we'll have to see on that, particularly if the ownership gets closer to like 35 or 40%. Darren Waller I love here, and though he's had a really rough start to the year, he's had plenty of games in the past where he's dominated the script, gone closer to a 40% target share. So I like him there, especially because he's only 22% owned and because he's only 3.7% at the captain slot. Juju I'm okay with. I think he's cheap enough. He's still getting ownership, though, so I don't love the play. I'm still going to have leverage there, but it's not going to be like 70, 80% in my poll, probably closer to like 50 at the very most. Hunter Renfrow, I like both at the flex and captain slot because we're playing with a full PPR over here on Draftkings. Guys like Renfrow have a lot higher ceiling on this sort of format than they would over there on a FanDuel or another site where you're not getting a full PPR. So he's only $5,800 and brings you a lot of flexibility at the captain slot, right? So he's 11.2% owned, which is a lot higher than some of his peers. So definitely the ownership is there on a Hunter Renfrow, but given how much more concentrated I expect the Las Vegas offense to be, and it's not like it's a super concentrated offense, right? It's not like we're dealing with Minnesota up there with pretty much only using like 3 or 4 fantasy relevant options. Still, it's closer to like 5, maybe 6 at the very most here for the Raiders, which helps narrow it down a bit. In terms of value options, I'm okay with Matt Collins, right? He's kind of asserted himself, given himself a role in this team. With Hunter Renfrow out, he was really productive, so I still think he'll be involved. I think he's an okay pick there at $5,000. Hardman, I like the price tag, $4,600. He gives you a lot of flexibility. The kickers are okay. They're never my favorite plays, but you've seen over the last few slates, they've seemed to smash. I mean, like Justin Tucker last time, we had Gano as the captain there a few slates ago. So crazy stuff happens. So I'm not going to be playing them at captain. I can tell you that right now, but I will have a few of the kickers in my player pool. Jerick McKinnon's only $3,000. We've seen him go off in quite a few primetime games. Brandon Bolden, I mentioned if the Raiders are playing from behind, I actually prefer him out of the backfield over somebody like a Josh Jacobs. Now, a lot of that comes down to price, right? He's only $2,000, but also due to the usage out of the backfield as a wide receiver. I'm okay with Foster Moreau, backup tight end for Las Vegas. He's not getting a ton of snaps, but he can score you a touchdown. And Jody Fortson, pretty much the same sort of play, right? He's only $400. It's $800 for Moreau, so you're getting an absolute steal on both players. But you need him to catch a touchdown. Fortson's pretty much only going to play in the red zone or in blocking heavy downs. So you got to get him to go out there and get you that splash play. All right, fellas, that is all I've got for the Monday Night Football preview. Going to be a quick one, right? Just hopping through the player pool, giving you an idea of some of the players that I'm getting to. But if you liked what you were seeing in terms of the projections, you want to see them update throughout the day, get the latest ownership before lock, see exactly who I'm playing for my lineups tonight. Because as of right now, those are just projected players in my pool. I haven't actually made my set of 150. When I go through, I hand build. I'm going to be doing an optimizer tonight, so I won't be hand building 150. I'll be doing them with my computer. I'll be able to give you the exact sort of players that I'm getting to. And that might change, right? Ownership might go drastically up or down on a few players. You might get a few different projections or surprise actives or inactives that really change the situation there. So if you're looking for the latest scoop, make sure to join the Patreon. A link is down in the description of the video. I do offer golf projections too, so if you're new here, you may not know that. This is mostly a golf channel, but I also do golf projections. There's a combo tier if that's something that you're interested in. But the more traditional method for all of you football fans is just the NFL tier. $10 a month gets you access to all of the Showdown projections that I'm doing. So those I do for all the island games. And then on top of that, I do main slate projections, some prize picks stuff from time to time on there. Definitely a lot that you'll want to check out. But that's all I've got here, guys. Best of luck with any of your lineups or any of your bets that you decide to place tonight, whether you're going with some of those props. But we'll be doing content throughout the week, hopefully a few main slate videos. I want to focus on a few of the strategy components going into this week, and I'll have a few videos covering Showdown throughout the week as well. So you won't want to miss any of it. Make sure to go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss any of that when it drops throughout the week. But other than that, that is all I've got, fellas. Best of luck, like I said, and let's get this cash.